The Roman-Persian Wars, 700 years, that shaped civilization. Two suns cannot share the same sky. For 7 centuries, the fate of the ancient world turned on a single frontier, the eternal border between Rome and Persia. Theirs was not a single war, but a series of wars, fought across deserts, mountains, and empires. A rivalry so long that it began before Christ and ended when Islam was already rising. It was a clash not only of armies, but of ideas. The discipline of Rome against the majesty of Persia, the sword of the West against the wisdom of the East. It began as an accident of geography. It ended as the exhaustion of two worlds. The first collision, Rome meets Parthia, year 1st century BC. In the 1st century BC, the Roman Republic was expanding furiously eastward, having conquered Greece, Asia Minor, and Syria. Beyond the Euphrates River, however, lay a realm no Roman had yet dared to cross. Parthia, heir to the old Persian kings. The Parthians were masters of the horse. Their cataphracts, armored riders whose lances could pierce through shields, and their archers, who could shoot while galloping in retreat, were unlike anything the slow, disciplined Roman legions had ever faced. In 53 BC, the ambitious Roman general Marcus Licinius Crassus decided to change that. He dreamed of winning Eastern glory to match Caesar's in Gaul. He led 7 legions, nearly 40,000 men, across the desert into Mesopotamia. But he was deceived by his guides and trapped near Carrhae, in modern-day Turkey. There, a Parthian commander named Serena unleashed a nightmare. For hours, the Parthian horse archers encircled the Romans, firing endless waves of arrows. When the legions tried to charge, Serena sent in his cataphracts. The desert became a killing field. Crassus's son was slain before his eyes. Crassus himself was lured into a truce, captured, and executed. According to some accounts, molten gold was poured down his throat, a cruel symbol of his greed. Only a fraction of the Roman army escaped. It was one of the worst defeats in Roman history, and it taught Rome a lesson it would never forget. Persia could not be conquered easily. 2. The struggle for Armenia, the buffer kingdom. Between the two empires lay Armenia, mountainous, wealthy, and strategically vital. Whichever power controlled Armenia held the gateway between Europe and Asia. For the next century, Armenia became the chessboard of imperial diplomacy. Rome installed kings loyal to itself. The Parthians replaced them with their own. Armenian nobles played both sides, seeking survival amid giants. In 34 BC, Mark Antony, the Roman triumvir and lover of Cleopatra, launched another invasion of Parthia. But winter, disease, and ambushes decimated his army. It was another humiliation. Rome's eagles, those sacred symbols of empire, were once again lost in the eastern sands. Only under Emperor Augustus did diplomacy prevail. In 20 BC, the Parthian king returned the captured Roman standards, a symbolic gesture that restored Roman pride without more bloodshed. For a generation, the frontier quieted, but silence in the east was always temporary. 3. The emperor who wanted it all, Trajan's conquest, 114 and 117 AD. In the 2nd century AD, the Roman Empire reached its zenith. Under Emperor Trajan, Rome was a machine of conquest, efficient, relentless, and confident. Trajan believed it was time to avenge Crassus once and for all. In 114 AD, he invaded Armenia, annexed it, and pressed deeper into Parthian lands. In 116 AD, Roman banners flew over Ctesiphon, the Parthian capital near modern Baghdad. Trajan even reached the Persian Gulf, dreaming of pushing to India, as Alexander had done centuries earlier. For a brief, blazing moment, Rome ruled the East. But the victory was illusion. The conquered lands erupted in revolt. Supply lines stretched thin. The heat and distance broke the legion's morale. Trajan died suddenly in 117 AD, and his successor, Hadrian, wisely withdrew. Rome had learned again that holding the East was far more difficult than conquering it. Parthia remained unconquered, bruised but unbroken. 4. A new Persia rises, the Sassanid Empire, 224–300 AD. By the 3rd century, the Parthian Empire was collapsing under internal strife. From its ruins rose a new, more centralized, and more fanatically Persian state, the Sassanid Empire. Founded by Ardashir in 224 AD, it claimed direct lineage from Darius the Great of ancient Persia. The Sassanids rejected Greek influence, revived Zoroastrian religion, and sought to restore the glory of the Achaemenids. To them, Rome was not merely a rival. It was a heretic empire. Their kings called themselves King of Kings, and on their coins appeared fire altars, symbolizing divine right and eternal flame. Under Shapur the Mar, the Sassanids struck hard and fast. In 260 AD, the Roman Emperor Valerian marched east to meet him and was captured alive at Edessa. The Persians paraded him in chains, and legend says Shapur used him as a human footstool when mounting his horse. Roman pride was shattered. The image of Shapur's triumph was carved into stone at Nakshi Rustam, still visible today, a taunt carved into eternity. Rome's response was chaos. Civil wars erupted. Eastern provinces seceded under Queen Zenobia of Palmyra. For decades, the frontier burned with shifting fortunes, until Emperor Aurelian restored order. 5. The counterattacks and Julian's fatal gamble, the 4th century. The next centuries saw an endless rhythm of invasion, reprisal, and uneasy peace. The Persian kings Narse and Shapur II repeatedly invaded Syria and Armenia, while Roman emperors counterattacked through Mesopotamia. In 298 AD, the Roman Emperor Diocletian finally secured a favorable treaty. Persia ceded territory, and Rome gained control of northern Mesopotamia. For the first time in centuries, the frontier favored the West. But Persia never forgot the humiliation. When Shapur II ascended the throne, he spent 40 years restoring Persian power. His armies besieged Roman cities, ravaged the Euphrates Valley, and fought the legions to a bloody stalemate. Then, in 363 AD, the young and brilliant Emperor Julian, known as the Apostate for rejecting Christianity, decided to reclaim Alexander's dream. He led 60,000 men into Mesopotamia, captured city after city, and reached the gates of Ctesiphon. The Persians retreated, burning their fields to starve the Romans. Julian pressed on, but was struck by a javelin during a skirmish. He died in his tent, whispering, "You have conquered, Galilean." A bitter acknowledgment to the faith he opposed. His death doomed the campaign. The Romans, leaderless and deep in enemy territory, negotiated a humiliating peace, surrendering 5 provinces east of the Tigris. Once more, the frontier shifted back to Persia. 6. The Long Cold War, 5th, 6th centuries. By the 5th century, both empires had settled into an uneasy equilibrium. The frontiers bristled with fortresses, Dara, Nisibis, and Edessa for the Romans, Ctesiphon and Gundashapur for the Persians. Trade caravans crossed the desert under military escort, carrying silk, spices, and gold. Religion became the new fault line. The Romans had embraced Christianity. The Sassanids upheld Zoroastrianism. Each side viewed the other's faith as a threat from within. Christians in Persia were suspected of sympathy with Byzantium. Zoroastrians in Roman lands faced persecution. Occasional wars broke out, like those under Kavad, 525–526, and Khosrow, 540–562, often sparked by border disputes or revolts in Armenia. In 540, Persian armies under Khosrow even sacked Antioch. one of the greatest cities of the Roman world, carrying its people into captivity. But both empires were too evenly matched for a decisive victory. For every fortress taken, another was rebuilt. For every treaty signed, another was broken. This was a centuries-long stalemate, a geopolitical tug-of-war across Mesopotamia. 7. The Final War, 602–628 AD, the Last Duel of Titans. Then came the last and greatest chapter of all. In 602 AD, the Byzantine Emperor Maurice was murdered by his own troops. The Persian king Khosrow II, who had once been Maurice's ally, swore vengeance. He declared war, claiming he would avenge his friend's death and restore justice. What began as revenge became the final Roman-Persian War, a conflict that would consume both empires entirely. Persian armies stormed into Byzantine territory, capturing Damascus, Jerusalem, and Egypt. In 614, they seized the True Cross, the holiest relic in Christendom, and carried it to Ctesiphon. By 619, the Byzantine Empire had lost half its lands. Even Constantinople trembled. It seemed the ancient dream of Persian domination had finally come true. But the Byzantines were not finished. In 622, a new emperor, Heraclius, rose from the ashes. He reformed the army, rallied the empire with fiery speeches, and struck back, not south, but north, through the rugged mountains of Armenia, where Persian defenses were weakest. Over 6 relentless years, Heraclius waged a war of genius, striking deep behind enemy lines, burning Persian supply depots, and defeating one royal army after another. In 627 AD, at Nineveh, he met the main Persian force in open battle. It was a brutal, close-quarters fight. Heraclius himself fought on foot, wielding a sword, rallying his men with shouts of, "God with us!" By nightfall, the Persians were routed. Khosrow II fled, only to be overthrown and executed by his own son. The war ended in exhaustion. The Byzantines recovered the True Cross and signed a peace that restored the old borders. The 700-year duel had finally burned itself out. 8. The fall of both empires, 630–651 AD. Neither Rome nor Persia had time to celebrate. Years of constant warfare had drained both treasuries, ruined trade, and left cities in ashes. Entire regions were depopulated. Soldiers were weary and unpaid. Then, from the deserts of Arabia, came a new force, the armies of Islam. In 633, Arab tribes, united under the banner of the Prophet Muhammad, burst into both empires simultaneously. The Persians, leaderless and divided, collapsed first. By 651, the last Sassanid king was dead, and Persia became part of the Caliphate. The Byzantines lost Syria, Palestine, and Egypt, retreating to Anatolia. The old world was gone. In the ashes of Rome and Persia, a new civilization rose, the Islamic world, carrying fragments of both legacies: Roman administration, Persian art, Greek philosophy. The very clash that had divided them had also fused East and West forever. 9. Legacy of an eternal war. The Roman-Persian wars changed history in ways few realize. Their centuries of rivalry forged the borders of modern Europe and the Middle East. They spurred military evolution, heavy cavalry, siege engines, fortifications, and inspired the idea of diplomacy between superpowers. Even the Cold War of the 20th century echoed their balance of power. Two rival empires, staring at each other across a frontier neither could cross. When you walk through the ruins of Palmyra, or gaze upon the walls of Istanbul, or see the Zoroastrian carvings of Naqsh Rustam, you are standing on the silent battlefield of this 7th-century war. It was the longest duel in ancient history, a contest of pride, faith, and endurance. In the end, neither Rome nor Persia won. but their struggle shaped the world we live in. For 700 years, the eagle and the sun waged war, not for survival, but for supremacy. From the sands of Kerhe to the gates of Ctesiphon, from the ashes of Jerusalem to the snows of Armenia, their empires rose, clashed, and fell. And in their fall, they gave birth to the world that followed. The Roman-Persian wars were not just battles of men, but the battle of civilizations, one that ended not with victory, but with transformation.